Alright, welcome back to another episode of Seeds of Music, the web's #1 resource for independent artists. I'm your host, Kyle Williams, and this is our weekly web show where I bring on music industry professionals and successful independent artists to just talk about the ways to build a bigger, stronger fan base and sell more music online and at shows. So for today, my guest is Leroy Miller, and Leroy is a veteran in the music industry, and I'm talking like he has been signed to 2 major labels. He's been in the business, since like the early 90s. He's had many of his songs featured in film and television, from Scrubs to Arrested Development to 10 Things I Hate About You and Driven. So this is a guy who has a ton of experience in the old music industry model. But here's what's different. Now that things have changed and we are in this new music industry where technology is playing a big role and independent artists learning marketing and promotion for themselves through the internet technologies like social media and email lists, he's on point with that as well, and actually has been making a living with music licensing, not only throughout the old times in the old music industry, but on into the new music industry now. And so with his wealth of knowledge, I just had to reach out to him and bring him onto the show. So you guys are really going to enjoy this. There's a lot of good information here and a lot of great stories. So let's jump right in. All right, Leroy, thank you for coming on to the Seeds of Music web show. I know we have a little slightly different setup here, but hopefully everything will go off without any kind of hiccups. But thanks again for coming on, man.
Hey, man, no problem. Anytime.
So you're actually not too far away from me. You're are you in Hollywood or West Hollywood?
Yeah, I'm kind of more in the Hollywood, just south of Hollywood. I mean, basically more Hollywood than West Hollywood. Kind of by the Grove, just south, a little south of Hollywood, couple like a mile south of Hollywood.
How long have you been in Los Angeles?
I've been in Los Angeles for probably, I think I moved here in 1990. So I've been in California for a long time, but I moved to the Hollywood area, to get closer to the action in 1990.
So like you, bottom line is you just have a ton of experience like in the music industry, and especially being in the hub of it in Los Angeles. And you've also, I can imagine, I've seen a lot of change like over the years from 1990, and then to 2000 and now today. And throughout this process, I know we talked about this before. You've been able to make a living with music licensing specifically. And I know you've toured a lot, and we've talked about that as well. And you're also a big proponent of direct to fan marketing tactics. That's helped you too. But what would you say would be like if you could maybe put it into like 3 key elements, like for making a living with music licensing? Are there like certain things you need to have in place beforehand, or tactics to reach out to the licensing companies, anything like that?
Well, probably the #1 thing is, and I say this to a lot of people. A lot of people are very curious about what I've done and stuff, and I can understand that because it's pretty cool. The thing that I've noticed that the industry lives and dies on material. If you got bad material, you're not going to make any money. If you've got good material, you've got a chance to license some stuff to film and TV.
Yeah.
I fell into a situation where, like, music supervisors were looking for, Lenny Kravitz or whatever, or whatever they were looking for, but it was just too expensive for them. They couldn't money. So what they do is they look for something that will fill that void. In fact, what they do is they temp that music in. So like when you're looking at a temporary music track to the film or the television show,
okay, you'll
see like, U2 or something in there, but there's no way they're going to keep that in there because it's going to cost them, $500,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
So they look for people that can do it cheaper, because they don't even have that as an entire music budget.
Yeah.
Even back in the day, when there was a lot more money for budgets, but I just happen to have a sound that, the material was there, the performance was there, the production was there, and they're like, we can't get U2 or Lenny Kravitz or whatever, but this Leroy fits perfect. And so I was like, sign me up, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, and I learned really, really quickly that was something that I could do pretty easily. I mean, you spend your whole life writing and playing out and meeting people and networking, trying to make it happen, and it takes, it takes a long, long time. You have to dedicate your whole life to it, and it never ends.
Yeah.
And then one day you get a phone call and somebody says, "Yeah, we love that song off your album. We're going to use it. How much?" And you negotiate a deal with them, and you get off the phone and you get a paycheck for it, and you think to yourself, I didn't even have to do anything really except for talk for 5 minutes on the telephone. Right then I realized this is a way to make money and still keep my music going and still keep it alive and be able to focus on getting better by constantly staying in the studio, recording, investing in equipment, and keeping my bands in the clubs, and that can cost money sometimes too. You got to be able to fund all that. So it was a great way to keep it rolling, and without having to flip burgers, so to speak.
Yeah, right on. So what was the first step that you took towards getting your music license when you really started?
It all started for me, obviously there's a fair amount of luck involved in the business. And I was fortunate enough back in the day, it was my first record deal. I've played in a lot of signed bands and stuff over the years, but this was like my first band. I was signed to Geffen Records. It was my old band called Hog. 3-piece power trio, kind of a punk rock. A little heavier, almost a little heavier than punk, but it had that punk vibe to it.
Yeah.
But very, very melodic. It was a great album, and when I got signed to a record deal, it kind of opens up the doors. You got managers that all of a sudden pop up out of nowhere. Before you know it, I'm managed by the same guy that manages Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
They're on Geffen,
Yeah.
and then they got me a publishing deal with Warner Chappell, and then once people start signing you, and they you get your signing bonuses, your advance, they want that money back. So they're going to do everything they can to exploit your music to try to recoup that money they just gave you. So it's kind of, everybody's kind of taking the same gamble. For me, it wasn't really much of a gamble. I was like, sign me up,
Yeah.
I want to rock. I want to play music full time. That was what my lifelong goal was, and I kind of finally had arrived at that point. And so one day my publisher said, we've got this movie, Black Sheep, Chris Farley movie, and they love your song. They want to use it as a main title, and they want to also use it for like a minute and a half in the movie, which is great because you get paid 2 different licenses, because a smaller piece is not going to be as much money as an end title. I mean, the main money is made on the main title when the movie starts, they play the whole song. That's you get a lot of money for that.
Yeah.
And then the end title, it's the same thing, and they play the whole song. And so they did that. It was like I didn't even really have any control of it. They wanted it, of course I agreed to it.
Yeah.
But that was a major film on a major label through a major publisher back when their budgets were actually pretty healthy.
Yeah.
And it was a decent payday for me. It kind of changed my life overnight, and I realized right then there's something more to this music licensing thing. So, I just started networking and meeting as many music supervisors as I could. And before you know it, I was, I had so much material back cataloged. I just gave them everything I had, and I just started getting more licensing as the years went on, and then eventually I wound up leaving Geffen Records. I got dropped actually, and because I didn't sell any records, but I made a ton of money on licensing, and I still make good money on that record from licensing, because that show Black Sheep, it won't go away. It's constantly on television and stuff. So when I got released from Geffen, and about a year later I got signed again to Hollywood Records, and it just kind of picked up. That sort of whole thing sort of started again. I got a deal, I got an advance, they wanted to make their money back, and because Hollywood Records is owned by Disney, they're making a lot of television shows and a lot of movies under that umbrella. There's NBC and all that. And so what happened was there was a movie called 10 Things I Hate About You, with Keith Ledger and all that in there.
Yeah.
And this music supervisor was walking down the hallways at Hollywood Records, because it's all within that building. The whole thing. It's kind of like a one-stop shopping for entertainment over there at the Disney lot. And she heard this song. One of the people at the label was just playing my album. Thought it was cool. It was a new release. And this lady heard it, and she said, "That's the song I need." And so it got on the 10 Things I Hate About You soundtrack, and in that movie, and it was a nice payday, and that soundtrack went like platinum all over the world. And it was, once again, I was getting that bug, like, man, this is it. I got to really start pursuing this. And from that moment on, I just started contacting every music supervisor I knew, who I had previously worked for, finding new ones. I used to send out, back in the day, I would make, I'd put together a little CD, and I would categorize all my music, because I write so much and produce so much other music outside of my solo, what I'm doing as an artist, that I've got country, I've got blues, I've got metal sounding stuff, I've got funk, and electronica, disco-y, electronica, electronic type music, all that kind of stuff. So I'd put it all on different CDs, put together these little bundles, and then I would get like 200 music supervisors' numbers, and you can get those. You can buy that book, the Music Industry Registry.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
It's online. I don't have a link handy right now, but it's called. They've got the A&R Registry, the Music Supervisor Registry, Management. They have these books, and every year they update it, and that thing's the real deal. In fact, I think you can get it through the Indie Bible group. They're part of all that in a way. They advertise through Indie Bible, I believe.
Yeah.
But I heard about this book, the registry for music supervisors, from another music supervisor. She said, you should just buy it. It's like $100 a year, and it's just got thousands of people that are doing this, because there are a lot of people. You and me can be music supervisors. Give them $50. They put your name in there. People start sending you music. Well, I would send out like 200 packets, and I'd get about 5 hits.
Uh-huh.
And some of those were big, and some of them paid a lot of money. I've done them for no money, where they just like splash your name on the bottom. It's called a cryon. Mm-hmm. And they put music by Leroy, blah blah blah, and that alone is, hey, it's publicity, and if it's on a major television show, then you're golden. Yeah. So I look at it like this. You can't really hold your music too precious, or you're never going to get any exposure. Nobody's going to know you're out there. You have to put it out. You got to say yes to everything, unless it's some sort of like thing that's going to really, really destroy your career. You wouldn't want your music in something that's going to backfire on you. But whatever. If it's like I did some free stuff for the Oxygen Channel, which is a women's network. Yeah. And they didn't have any money, and I was like, fine, just put my name on it. Boom, I've done a few of those, and then I've had real big ones, like Driven, a Sylvester Stallone movie about car racing, and that I got the main title and the end title.
Nice.
So I got that was real huge, man, and I actually got to hang out with Stallone. Very cool dude. That dude is very cool. He's a smart man.
I'd love to meet him for sure.
He calls me on the phone. He's talking about my songs. He kept calling me Levi. He's like, Levi, I love your song. My wife loves it. She can't stop dancing to it. And he's like, man, I can't wait to meet you. And he was such a nice guy. And they had a party when they wrapped the movie, and everybody was there. And he invited me over. I sat at his table and shook his hand and talked to him for a few minutes. And you know what? It's just a dude knows what he's doing for sure. He's a straight up talent for sure. I was really nice, and he was a nice guy. So
yeah, he's one of those guys that I just get the vibe when I'm seeing him perform, that he's probably a really genuine guy, because he comes from really genuine roots too, and his story of making Rocky is amazing. It's
mind blowing, and it's still an amazing movie. But yeah, he's the real deal. You kind of, he's Hollywood all the way, but behind the scenes, man, I mean, bottom line is he was involved with the music of his own movie. He called me personally and dealt with me. I mean, that's never happened ever.
Yeah.
So he's a good cat.
Yeah. Yeah, we actually, I had another guest on the show that she had a song placed in a Kevin Costner film, and Kevin Costner like handpicked like her song for it, and you know,
Wow.
he was he was involved with that as well. So I imagine that's got to be pretty badass. Just
Yeah, well, you know, a lot
Yeah.
of those actors and producers and or the ones that wear many hats, they're really really music driven. They're involved. They don't want music in their movie that doesn't represent how
Yeah.
they feel. So I think it's pretty cool when they do that.
Yeah. So like now that you know that we've been talking about like all this like history behind how you got into music licensing, you're like, aha, man, there's something to this. Like I need to pursue this, and this will give me a lot more flexibility. How has music licensing changed for you, like recently? With like the changes that we've been seeing in the music industry, period.
Yeah, it's affected everything. I mean, the whole world is affected by the change. The economy of the world from top to bottom has changed for everybody. And in music specifically, we all know the changes that have happened with record sales. I mean, there's not even record stores anymore. And but with publishing, in regards to licensing and publishing, it has changed too, because basically the budgets have shrank to where there's really not hard. There really isn't even any budgets anymore. I mean, when you could get a $500,000 publishing deal 15 years ago pretty easily. I mean, you can never do that now. I mean, you'd be lucky to do that if you were like, a major artist that was like making a comeback or something. As a new artist, you'd be lucky to get $30,000, which isn't even enough to quit your job. You know what I mean? That 30,000. You got to look at it this way: you're going to keep a third of whatever you make in the music business, because you got the IRS, the state taxes, you've got all your managers, attorneys, agents, band members, all kinds of stuff. Money flies out the window. So when you're all done paying your commissions and your taxes and stuff, you get about 1/3. So if you're getting 30 grand, you can count on 10 of it staying in your pocket. So it's changed. So the budgets aren't there. And then another thing that's happened that I've noticed is, like, I was fortunate that I did this, started years ago doing this. I've noticed over time it's become more difficult for me to get licensing in film and TV, because now everybody's kind of figured it out, or they're starting to, and so there's more and more bands that will do it for free and do it for very little money. So the competition is I don't even know how to explain. It's just different. It's a different dynamic to where there are so many new bands now, because I mean, when you look at just the industry in general, back when I was doing it, there was no home recording back in the day in the 90s and stuff. I mean, I had a 4-track cassette recorder. That's how I made my demos, but that's not you can't really make records on that. I mean, you could make some really special, cool, lo-fi sounding, groundbreaking thing, but in all practical purposes, you can't. It's going to sound bad. So now that everybody's got software and computers, and you can make records, and that's how I make my records now. You can make them right in your living room. I mean, with the software and programs I have now, you can have outstanding results. You don't have to spend hardly any money, and so you can crank out material. There's really no excuse not to make a great record now, other than you got
putting in the time and effort.
Yeah, and having a great song that's got to resonate. Because no matter what, the stuff's got to resonate.
Yeah.
If you're doing something for Disney that's just like this super candy pop thing that you're like would never play for any of your friends, but Disney's going to pay you $5,000 for it, you churn out a bunch of those and you take a meeting with them, or just you got to get it out there. It's easier to do that now, and that has nothing to do with your actual sound. That's just like you're just creating your library, your music library.
Yeah.
And so nowadays there's so many people doing that, and there's just so much material that they kind of watered it down. It's everybody. Sorry about that. Everybody kind of knows, or not everybody, but a lot more
More and
people
more,
are,
yeah.
yeah, more and more
More and
people are
more.
getting hip to that. So even for myself, who I've got a track record and my resume and discography is incredible, and I look at it all the time and go, I can't believe this is me. It doesn't mean anything because you're only as successful as your last like gig, like your last hit or your last show, or
Yeah.
it's like, so if a year goes by and you haven't tagged anything, you start to panic. Fortunately for me, I usually get a couple a year now, but I mean, I used to just get them all year long. So it has changed, but doesn't mean that you can't go out there and make it happen. I mean, I'm sure that I could, if I really wanted to sit down and analyze why my stuff has gone down, I'm sure I could probably find some things that I could have done different. It's
So,
always retooling and always trying to progress and get better at it.
well, that's like the kind of attitude you're going to have to, because
Sure.
this is like a tough industry. It is hard. Everybody knows that, and there's no way of getting around it. But you got to have a belief system. You got to have an attitude that's going to actually get you somewhere with that.
Totally agree, man. You're never going to get anywhere sitting around the house like, watching Oprah eating chips all day. You got to get out. You got to be gigging. You got to be introducing yourself. First of all, nobody's going to invest in you if you're not visible and you're not out there doing it, And maybe you're just in your studio working all the time. You got all this great material, but you got to have somebody repping it for you. Mm-hmm. If you're not doing it, you got to have somebody doing it because they're not looking for you. Trust me.
Yeah.
They may be looking for music, but they're not looking for you. You've got to put that music in front of them. And if it's something that works, you could get it. And
what's your opinion on, I'm curious, like, what's your opinion on, like, musicians and artists who they have this like belief that if they just work on making the music, everything else will fall into place?
Well, it's like you almost have to wear several hats, I think. I mean, you've got to have your songwriter hat, you've got to have your like live rock star when you leave the house, going to the venue, meeting people, getting on stage and kicking butt. You got to have that hat. You've got to be able to edit yourself. So you've got to be your own editor too. I mean, you got to look at your pictures. You got to look at your music and your lyrics, and you got to try to edit yourself or have your band, everybody do it. So I mean, you just can't be good at one thing anymore. Where a guy like Jimi Hendrix back in the day, the only thing he could do was play the guitar.
Yeah.
And he was the greatest of all times. Well, nowadays, being that talented isn't going to make you the next Jimi Hendrix because the dynamic of the industry has changed. There are really talented, I see these 10-year-old kids that are like mind-blowing singers all the time, and I'm like,
what the?
Jeez.
I know.
When I was 10 years old, I was like, dreaming of being able to play guitar. I mean, I did start playing music at about 8, but I mean, by 10, I was still pretty primitive.
Yeah.
And you see these people that are like, these young kids that are just like blazing vocalists and pianists or guitar players, and you're like, holy smokes. But that alone isn't going to get you there because, I mean, how many great musicians have never been heard? Most of them.
Yeah.
And then you see these musicians that are, not taking away anything from them, but they're not necessarily that great, and they don't sing great, or they don't do anything really. They're not virtuosos, but they're a virtuoso at being a personality and getting out there and making friends and looking great and having an image and somehow getting something to resonate. Yeah. And then, people see you and they know you're out there. They're going to say, hey, man, call that person. They're happening,
Yeah.
So you kind of have to, promote yourself nowadays, and that's with all this social media that's available. I mean, really, right now is actually, it's an interesting thing because I came from the old method of it was before social media. I mean, when I was out on the road touring and stuff on my first album, we didn't even have cell phones. I didn't even have I didn't have a computer, that's for sure. I didn't have a computer till way later, and but you can't do it like that anymore. So I mean, I suppose you probably could, but
It'd be in rare circumstance, you know.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like a grassroots type of thing. But how are you going to get people to see you? I don't know.
Or remember you, because people are more assaulted every day with like images and other stuff that takes up their brain space. You know, it's like
so
yeah, you know, you're gonna
get beat. You're gonna get beat. The competition's gonna beat you when you've got like some really like happening band with a killer image, some great songs. They're doing great shows. They're social networking, tweeting, videotapes, YouTube channels. You know, which is what I'm, you know, I don't know about yourself, but I know I do. You know, I probably spend too much time on that stuff sometimes, you know, and just because I feel it's so easy to work it and I get a good response from it.
Yeah.
And I sell records by communicating directly to the fan. You know?
So how do you feel about, do you think artists need to understand the basics of marketing? Because we're also talking about marketing here, you know. Do you do believe it?
Yeah, I believe it wholeheartedly. If I would have known when I got my first record deal back in the mid '90s, it's a while ago now, huh?
Yeah,
I'm dating myself, but that's okay because that's how it is. Everybody's got their story. Mm-hmm. I've got mine. But if I would have had the tools that I have now, back then, my career would be completely different because I think about all those tours I did, all those people I met, and I just shake their hand, have a beer with them, and walk away and never see them again. Where nowadays, I would have been back at the hotel room, friending them on Facebook. I'd have photographs of them that I'm Instagramming. Yeah. I'd have their Twitter. We'd be exchanging phone numbers, and I'd be texting, and which is what I do now. When I meet people that are interesting, when I meet people that I want to connect with, and that I feel that we both can like get some value out of each other, it's immediate. I mean, I was just out 2 nights ago, and I met some young kids at this show. I was out at this jazz venue watching this great guitar player.
You talking about the Baked Potato? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was at the Baked Potato, and I met these like really young kids that went to the Musicians Institute, and they were just really cool, had a lot of energy, and they wanted to know about me, and we kind of exchanged some stories. By the next day, we're all friends on Facebook. I guarantee you, my next show, those kids are all going to be at my show.
Yeah.
There's 3 or 4 new fans right there, guaranteed. And and if they call me and say I'm doing a performance at school, it'd be great if you could come and support me. I'll go check them out. Yeah. I'll meet more people while I'm at their show.
Yeah. So it's like this idea of building. I mean, have you heard of the true fan model before? You know, this idea that you have fans that are so strongly connected with your music and you as a person that they will support you for the lifetime of your career. Maybe spend X amount each year on whatever you release, anything you release.
Yeah, I really do believe that. In fact, if you're not shooting for that as your ultimate goal, you're going to have a short career in the music business, because those people will find somebody else that does care for them, and they will pull their money out for everything they do. And if you don't, I think people have not just now, but throughout history, I think people have a real good, it's a bullshit meter.
Bullshit detector, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and if you're not genuine, they can tell. If you're super arrogant and you're just not cool, they're going to just write you off. But if you're super arrogant and then you get on stage and kick their ass and then you make contact with them later, they're going to go, this guy's on fire. I love that. He might be arrogant, but he's actually just putting it out there. He's backing it up. He's reaching out still. So in a way, it's not necessarily an arrogance. It's like a confidence.
Yeah, I think there is a difference between arrogance and confidence. I think people confuse confidence with arrogance when they feel insecure in that person's presence. Because if they can write it off as arrogance, then they don't have to confront their own insecurities. But what really matters is what happens after you're done playing. Do you get behind the merch table and talk to people? Do you get off a stage and talk to people? Do you ask questions about like, how'd you make it out to this show? I mean, I used this example before. I did a training video for for some followers of the show, and I talked about how I had discovered an artist on Spotify, actually. Okay, and I like the music so much that I was using the Discover tab, and it showed they had like, because Songkick has like an integration with Spotify to tell you when you have shows for artists that are on your playlists. And so I saw that this person was coming to play at the Echoplex in Los Angeles, and so I was like, hell yeah! And I looked up, and the ticket was like, something reasonable, like 10 to 20 or something like that. But even 20, I was like, yeah, I'll spend 20 to go out there and see him. So I go out there. He, drops it like a boss. Like, it was a great show, a new experience for me. But once the show was done, he left through the back, and that was that. Not even at the merch table. Yeah. And it was like such a waste. I remember thinking, like, that was a great show, but man, if he would have came out and just like introduced, he could have just did something as simple as like introducing himself. And there wasn't like a million people at the Echoplex, there was like for this show there's probably like 200 or something like that. Yeah. But still, you have to have awesome. A hustle. You have to big time. Who cares? Hey, like, do the hustle,
Hey, like I was saying, man, back in the day, I mean, I used to do, that's all we had back then was the merch table, and I still work a merch table, It's you got to talk to every single person that wants to talk to you. I mean, I can remember times where you would have some shows that, obviously they're bigger than others, and I'd go out to my like merch table area, and I'd be there for 3 hours. I mean, I would have like the crew, everybody like ready to leave. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm still working, guys. When I'm done working, we can load all our stuff up and we can leave, but this is how we're going to like pay our bills so we can get to the next show. Yeah. You have to, I mean, let's face it, your crowd and your fans, they are your boss. Without them, you don't get paid, because without the fans, what are you doing? You're just playing to an empty room. You're playing to a wall, and that's not going to do anything for you. There's nothing there. It's meaningless at that point. So, yeah, it's you've got to do everything you can, especially nowadays, man. You get that kid who's a huge fan. I saw you on blah 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 Scrubs or whatever show, and man, I'm so glad that you're here talking to me. I do this with YouTube. I go through YouTube about once a month, and I just troll all the stuff, because I've had some songs that have used.
Well, you don't mean troll, cause
not in the back. No, I guess I should say.
Don't use troll. Troll means you go and you say stuff to incite.
Talk crap. No. Okay.
You probably mean stroll through or.
Yeah. Not troll. I go and I probably shouldn't have said that. Huh? So we'll erase that from the record. Yeah. But no, I'll go on there because some of my songs have been used in so much stuff that people make videos of them. And one of my songs, "Good Time," which was used in a show called Scrubs and a ton of different movies. I started counting it up one time, and when I got up to, I think it was about 5 million, I just stopped counting of views from different videos. I mean, some of those videos have almost 1 million on that one video. Yeah. And, I will read through these, and people will make these comments like, great video. Did you get permission to use it? And they're like, and I find those comments, and I just go right in there and say, hey man, thanks for keeping my music alive. I want them to do it. Yeah. I want them to spread that word, because, maybe a bunch of people listen to it and that's all they need, but somebody's going to go buy that because they want it for their collection or whatever, or they want to support the artist. Actually,
I think more than often it's because you established some kind of an emotional connection with them. Yeah. Therefore, when they think about you and your music, it's not just the emotion of the music, but it's the emotion of the connection they feel they have with you. Yeah. And I think that's what really gets. Huge. That's what I see gets like for independent artists that are making the living that come on this show. That's what I see actually fans paying for.
Hey, my idols. I love a lot of different things, but like my main idols are like Ray Charles and Prince and stuff like that. if I like made a comment on one of their videos and like Ray Charles commented back, you know how happy I'd be. So I can only imagine that no matter what level
Yeah.
of success you're at, it's the same. Because you know I will respond, and sure enough, I'll get these replies to my reply going, I think it's really cool, Leroy, that you take the time to talk with your fans and the people that are interested in your music. And I hear it all the time. They go, it's rare. It's rare. Good for you, man. And I'm like, wow. It almost seems sad to me that people don't connect more with their fans. You know,
what do you think it is that
I think some people get to a point where they're just so busy and they're so successful they just don't have time to get on YouTube and scope things out, you know.
But what about my experience with the show? I mean, this guy wasn't huge. I mean, he's signed to a small label that has its particular type of music, but I mean, I'm sure he was exhausted from touring, but still, I mean, there's got to be some room there, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look at Dane Cook. He's that comedian. He got his whole thing from social media.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his whole thing started from social media, and he created millions of hardcore fans. And before he even had a deal, I read this thing where the guy says, "Well, you know, can you show me your audience?" He goes, "You got a computer?" And yeah, right there. He just went and logged into like his Facebook or whatever, and it just he like broke the computer because he had 3,000 people that wanted to talk to him as soon as he logged on.
Yeah.
There's a guy that worked it to the max. And became a very successful comedian, and I'm sure he's still making a decent living.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a few years ago that he was super hot, but I imagine he's still got a great gig going. You know, at some level, you know, you've got to work it, man. And if you know the days of just like kind of thinking it's just going to happen because you're the deal is just it ain't going to work that way. You've got to create your own like universe and then put it out there and it'll come back, you know.
I think a great example, and I use her as an example a lot, is of like an artist who is large, who has had a lot of success and was on a major label at one time, but still manages the time to connect with fans over social media, is Amanda Palmer. And I've even like, I mean, it's just incredible. I've even just there was some tweet that she had. Twitter's really great, by the way. It's been really great for me, and it's probably like her biggest platform.
Mm-hmm.
No, she said that it's like been one of her biggest platforms to connect with her fans. And there was some tweet, and it reminded me of a story, you know, in my life, and I just tweeted about, you know, replied to it, you know, real quick, real short about it, and you know, she replied back, you know.
Wow,
that's
cool.
She was like, thanks, and my name was on the handle. She was like, thanks, Kyle, like, you know, and then had a comment to make on that, and then other people within her circle favorited that, you know, because it was like it was something about like she made me think about because I went to college to study art, and I had this professor who the way he would convince you to work as hard as you could to make your art the best it can be as possible was and remove any tiny flaw was, he said, you don't go to, you know, if you go to on a date and you have mustard on the corner of your, you know, lip, she's not going to pay attention to what you're saying. She's just going to be staring at the mustard, you know. True. So that was like his I don't know what the words for it, analogy or his story to represent that idea, you know, basically, you know, clean up the corners of your art piece, you know, clean off that dirt and whatnot. But the point is like, I just like took me 2 seconds to tweet that, and then there she's like, hey, awesome Kyle, and then it's like, that's forged, even if it seems minute, that's a relationship, like connection thread that's been woven there, you know, to some degree, and do it over time. Then suddenly, like, now I'm not just following her on Twitter, I'm listening to her TED Talks. I'm like, you know, checking out her Facebook post. Oh, she's gonna be like, you know, in LA for a show. There you go. You know, and it's stuff. What I'm finding is stuff happens like that. You know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, she just never stopped, and she built it up organically. She's very talented, and you know, just remember there was a time when nobody wanted anything to do with her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was like, no, 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 this can't happen.
Yeah.
Now she's in complete control, or at least maybe not complete control, but she's got a lot of clout in her corner now because she built it up right and she did it honestly, and she believes in who she is. She's very talented. So you put all that together and it's just, it's an undeniable force. But if you take away the social media, her perseverance, and just strip it straight down to her raw talent, she'd still be nowhere. She would be unheard of.
Yeah.
But put all those things together, which are her talents, many talents, and put them all together, and it's a super powerful force that it's undeniable.
Yeah.
And that's important, and you kind of have to do that. And I don't know about you, but once you sort of start to wrangle some of these technologies and these concepts of social networking and how to use computer programs and how to, it becomes kind of fun. I like.
It gets easier. It gets easier. Yeah. Like I don't have to. Like I mean, what did musicians do back in the day? They learned how to write a letter and put it in the post office box. And our shit's more complicated now, but it's literally like. It's not like a musician doesn't have to know how to use tools to accomplish other things in their lives. It's and some people might not like computers, but if it means that it's going to improve your career, then get over it, and
big time.
Just do it. I mean, you're not going to be able to avoid, and this is just my opinion, you're not going to be able to avoid doing shit you don't like to do, you know? You got to earn that point where you can get to the level where you're delegating that out because you've learned the basics around all these things that you have to do that you like and you don't like to do. Now you're at this point, so you can hand that off, but you still have the knowledge of how that works, so you can maintain control of the ship.
Yeah, you can manage it. I mean, I've had so many conversations with cats that are totally anti all the new modern stuff that we're all using now, and I always use this story. Like I can remember when we used to have to pay a couple $1,000 to go record a couple songs. Then we'd have to have somebody mix it, and then we'd have to take it down and have somebody master it, and then we'd have to pop these tapes in the mail. Wait a week to get there, wait a couple weeks to get a response. Now I can do the whole song and the whole thing mixed, mastered, and delivered and email it and get a response by the morning. I mean, it's like, all right, so I get it. You're an analog freak. By the time you get a response, I will have already been a week on the road promoting this album.
Do you feel like it's like a religious thing for them? Like, I mean, it just seems like...
What it is it's a bunch of stuff. I believe it's fear, and I think that fear is probably the biggest hurdle in life on any level: career, relationships, health, whatever.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Fear is, for lack of better terms, is the devil. And I just mean that as a label to put something on it. That will kill and crush anything that you ever could try to accomplish. If you fear, it will not happen. That's why you see people that are fearless. I mean, you see them all the time, these people trying out for like American Idol that can't sing, and they're just up there. They believe in themselves, and it may be so bad it's ridiculous, but then all of a sudden it gets picked up on the news, and the guy's a millionaire overnight. Like the one guy, I can't remember, the Asian guy that was so bad.
Shebang.
God, he loved it. Yeah. He loved it. And I just saw
Was it William Hung?
One of those guys. A few years back, but I mean, that guy went on to become something because he just, he wasn't great, but man, what he did have was that heart, and people love that, man. And so it's like maybe it became a bit of a novelty, but you know what? I don't know where he was working before that, but I bet his life improved quite a bit after he put it out there. Didn't matter what he was doing, he just believed in it, made it happen. And look where it took them. You put it out, it comes back. If you put out bad, negative vibes, you're going to get bad, negative things coming back at you. So, the whole fear of technology and fear of this and fear of that, it's like, okay,
Well, it's also a lot of anger too. Like I feel like when people, because you can sense. It just makes me think of like I'm kind of a Star Wars nerd, so I was thinking of the Star Wars thing. But you can like sense that anger, you know.
Like the new guys versus the old guys and all that.
Well, it was like I was thinking of the scene in Return of the Jedi where like it's Luke is getting like he's trying to get the Emperor's trying to get Luke to be angry, and he's just saying, I can sense your anger or whatnot. But it's I can kind of get that sense that anger from musicians when I talk to them, and they seem like pretty bitter about the way things are headed, obviously because things have gotten more difficult, but it's also I think forcing them to question how they've done things up until this point, and it's also forcing them to change, and no one likes to change.
Yeah, change is like the offspring of fear. You've got fear, and then you've got all these little offshoots of it, and change is probably the biggest next in line for sure. Nobody likes change. Children don't like change. Old people don't like change. It doesn't matter, Remember, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but for me it happened a couple times when my family would move and I'd have to go to a new school. And that first day of school at the new school was like, oh man, this is horrible. Yeah. Because you're afraid, you're scared, and you just wish you could go back to your old buddies and old school and all that. And then, after a few days, you make new friends and somebody invites you over to hang out and,
And then you gain some confidence and personal power because you realize that you can actually deal with shit as it goes, But
yeah, exactly.
I mean, but yeah, that's just been my experiences because, I meet, when I go out to blues jam, when I went to a lot of blues jams in the valley when I lived up there, and I met like a lot of older cats, and I could kind of get like they didn't get where things were now, and they didn't want to get it. They just wanted to do the same thing over and over again, which is that's a whole different thing. But for you as like a professional musician, do you feel positive about the future of music for independent artists?
I do. This is what I to me. The one thing that I constantly focus on is that I control everything now. I've had record contracts. I've had major publishing deals. And, like I said earlier, it's like you get about a third of that. Well, the way I do it now, I get it all. So I don't have to sell 100,000 records to break even. If I sell 100,000 records now, I am rich. So I don't have to sell that many. I mean, I can sell a few thousand records.
You could sell like 100,000 records for $1 each and make $100,000
and make $100,000, and you could literally buy a house, a small house, or put a down payment on a house and keep things rolling. But I mean, it's I view it like this. The change that the music industry is going through is just begun. Technology, when you think about how fast technology has grown in the past 20 years, and now we're doing all this direct-to-fan marketing using internet marketing techniques to sell records, which is just starting to happen now, even though there have been people that have been successful in doing it for a while, because internet marketing has been around for a while, but it's specifically using it for art to sell music or videos or comedy shows or whatever you're trying to do, sell books, romance novels, whatever it is, to sell your art. It's kind of a new thing, especially for music, like selling MP3s or whatever. It's kind of a new thing, and it's just going to get there's going to be more and more of that happening, and more technologies and more new avenues. I mean, think about it. Facebook. Before Facebook, it was MySpace. MySpace went away. I guess it's trying to make a comeback now, but eventually MySpace is going to go away, or Facebook's going to go away too. And what's next? It's going to be Instagram next, or it's constantly going to keep evolving. Like it's just like with internet marketing. You've got Google changing the rules about 2-3 times a year. And like you have these softwares that help you market, and then 6 months later they're obsolete because they completely changed the algorithms of Google. That's technology, and it just gets faster and faster and faster. So I can only imagine like where we've come in 20 years, we're probably going to do in the next 5 years. this
It's
next
exponential. It's exponential at this point. It's like this curve that just goes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the musicians and the songwriters that get on that train now and learn how to market themselves via the internet and know how to promote on a level like the big dogs do through social media and all that. It's not that expensive, really, and
It's not expensive at all to start.
I mean,
Not at
think
all.
about it. I mean, when you think about the marketing budgets for to be on TV, like on the Super Bowl or whatever, I mean, it's
Yeah.
millions of dollars. Where if you have a couple $100, you can market your album for a few weeks, maybe, and your return on investment will be more than $200, and at that point, you're actually making money selling music. So you scale that up, spend a couple grand, and make even more money. And you just build it up and just keep going with it, and constantly. Nowadays people don't even really put out full albums; they just put out singles. So I mean, you could release a single every month or every couple of months. It just and now you have this promo thing that you can do instead of releasing one album. And that's it. And then you got a year before you can do another album.
Yeah.
You could be releasing that stuff every month or every other month. And with that release, you've got a whole bunch of pictures, new stories, you're promoting yourself. And there's always something in the mix, always keeping moving and always keeping going. And I think that's what all the new stuff is allowing artists to do. We're able to do things that really they weren't even able to do back in the day with the major labels and Billboard magazine and radio promotion, which is a whole other topic, radio, and internet radio and all that kind of stuff. I honestly believe that you can get more traction marketing your albums on Facebook than you could be on every radio station in the country. It doesn't necessarily resonate to album sales. It just does, because they listen to a song. If they don't have a link, see you later.
Yeah.
Unless they have Shazam or something and they can write down the name of your band. But I mean, there's a good chance it's just going to go in one ear and out the other ear. And they're going to go, that's a great song. I mean, hey, I used to be on the radio a lot. Mm-hmm. I had when I had my old band Hog, my first single was the #1 most added song in the United States for 5 weeks in a row. I was beating out Foo Fighters. I was beating out Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins. I was beating all those guys. Didn't sell any records. So I don't know what to tell you. It's
like the promotion and the exposure isn't enough. You actually have to have
a
way of selling it.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's got to be the full connection. So what would happen is people were hearing it, wanted to buy it, but the label didn't have it in the stores. I mean, I used to be on the road and roll into I'd go to the local record shops, and I'd never see my records in there and go, why are we even out here? We're spending all my money on the road because, ultimately as the artist, you have to recoup that money.
Yeah.
And there's no records here. I mean, I remember I did this one, what they called an in-store, where you'd go in there and there's people waiting for you and sign autographs and play a song on your acoustic guitar and do all that, and just promote your album. And I had this big in-store, and we literally had to drive about 4 hours out of the way to get to it, and then get back in the car and drive 10 hours to make it to the show for the next day. My driver wasn't happy to have to make that detour, but I'm like, we got to do it. It's an in-store. I get to this in-store, and they don't even know who I am. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Oh. So basically what you're under, you have to rely on this massive team of idiots that work at a record company. And they are mostly fucking idiots, and that's why they didn't protect. That's why the music industry did not protect their shit when the internet started happening.
Yeah.
If they would have got on top of it, instead they're like, "Oh, we're too powerful. Nothing's gonna happen to us."
Yeah.
Yeah, they got raped. Is what happened. It changed the industry forever.
Yeah, yeah.
Had they gotten on board with it and said, "Hey, let's figure out a way to do this,"
and
utilize
it. Yeah.
Connect with these kids. Now they're trying to play catch up, and it's too late. Everybody hates them.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to. Yeah, kids don't care. They'd rather talk to me personally than some record company website. They'd rather come directly to me, and when I, say hi back, or, I'm always giving out free stuff to people too. I mean, I had this story. this guy wrote me a letter and said, I've noticed your music, blah, 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 you might want to look into that. And I was like, wow, thanks a lot for hipping me to that. I didn't, there was just some weird thing on my website that I'd missed. So I just gave him free music. Said, thanks, man, for bringing it to my attention. Freebie, it's on me. He's thrilled. I guarantee you that guy will go out and buy every single record I put out independently for the rest of my life now, because he was thrilled to make that contact. And then the fact that I gave him some free tunes.
You showed that you gave a shit.
Yeah, I cared. Well, yeah. And the fact that he cared and hipped me to this like weird coding thing on my website, which, of course, he was obviously a smart dude and figured it out.
Yeah.
But he was honest with me, so I hooked him up, and that's how you do it. I mean, I've done all kinds of different things to connect on different levels. I was doing an online music show when I was living in Nashville. I had three cameras and everything automated, and I mean, it was like my own television studio. And I would be playing. I'd do it every week, and I'd do like an hour-long show, and I'd do it right in my like little studio in front of a green screen, and my band was a backing track, but everything was synced up, all the cameras, everything was pre-programmed and automated. It was like magical. But I would get emails like the following, few days after I'd play from people in Russia, Japan. I got tons of fans in England. I never even knew it until I started doing that show, and everybody's from England. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, we like the show Scrubs. It's like Seinfeld over here. It's a huge show for us over here, and we love your song. You should come over here and play. All the cover bands are playing the song, blah blah blah. So it's like you learn things, by connecting with those fans that you would have never known by blogging or getting on Facebook or tweeting or, I like Instagram a lot. I like pictures. I've got so many pictures from everything I do present all the way back to the day, and I love all the throwback Thursdays and all that kind of stuff. People like fun. Yeah, people love to see those old pictures of you back when you had a skinhead or a big beard, or, it's like I'm like constantly changing my look because I get bored, and I think your fans find that to be interesting to see that this is a real person. He's over the his course of his career, he's been all kinds of different things, and it's all cool, and I'm always representing it, and it's always me. So I believe that through the social networking and all the different direct-to-fan marketing, the YouTube, doing Ustream live streams, and even like how we're doing this on Skype right now. I mean, honest, dude, I'm like, as we're doing this, I'm like, man, I got to start doing some more like Skype stuff, like connecting with people and finding new ways to sell whatever. I mean, do guitar lessons or vocal lessons or just anything, always got to try to pay that rent one way or another, man.
Yeah, true, man. But this has been an epic Skype interview, man. I've been enjoying. I just love the stories you have, man, and that's what I really connect with, and I think that's what, especially when you do direct to fan marketing, man. If you're able to tell your story well, then you're able to be able to grow your career in a way that's really going to work for you, because that's how fans connect. They connect with the music and they connect with your story. But I have just one last question here. It's a fun question. What's your favorite album, and what would your life be like if it never existed?
Oh, my favorite album. Oh, that's hard. That's a hard one because I kind of have like a whole group of records that I like, but I'd have to say the record that I wore the grooves off was Sly Stone Fresh, because vocally he's just like, him and Ray Charles are the best singers, male singers, I think. But that album Fresh by Sly and the Family Stone is just the sound of it is crazy. It's like the first time a drummer ever played to a drum machine.
Oh,
they got this little drum machine it's not even drums, it's just like these beeps, it's a really old school analog drum machine, and they've just put on these like little beats, and the guy would play to it, so automatically it almost had this like hip hop sort of loopy feel. It's kind of, the groove is like flamming off each other, so it's real fat and thick, like a bunch of like loops, running together that aren't They're not perfect, but they sound amazing like that.
Yeah.
And then just like all the instrumentation, the horns. I'm a big fan of horns and keyboards and stuff. I love guitar and stuff too, but I also love like keyboards and synthesizers, analog synthesizers, all that kind of old school stuff, and Hammond organs and stuff. And they have all that in there. But above all is Sly. You know, he's so funky and soulful that it's like kind of achieves two things for me, because I love funk music but I really love soul music, and he kind of combines them both together in a way that is just, it's undeniable. I mean, you know, so many people are inspired by Sly, but that album, I think, changed me as a vocalist more than anything, because the way he was singing, it was interesting, because he was singing and there's a little break, and then he'd sing another phrase, and there's a break. So in between those breaks, you could be in the car, and he'd sing his line, and there's a little break. You just copy it, and you try to like cop it, and there's plenty of room, and then there's the next riff, and then so it's almost like this perfect thing to like. For me, it was a great album to learn how to expand my voice. I've always been a pretty decent singer. I've always had a naturally soulful voice, but vocabulary-wise, as far as what I could do with my voice, it's constantly growing, constantly, never ends, you know. And I remember when I started really getting into that album fresh, something happened to me. It's like, oh, I see here. I don't even know how to explain it, but it just got out of the basic melody singing, and it got more into like an instrument. He's singing like blues riffs, you know. They're soulful riffs, and they're not too notey, you know, like a lot of the kids now are real notey.
Yeah.
I can't
all over the place.
I can't do that. It's too fast. I have to slow. My voice is slow. Mm-hmm. And Sly, he sang slow, and he every once in a while we'd do a notey thing, but it was still slow compared to how these kids sing now. Not taking anything against what they're doing, but I just like that a little bit more soulful approach. But yeah, I love that album. You got to listen to it if you haven't heard it before. You probably heard a couple songs on there.
Yeah, I mean, my brother would play my mom had the anthology disc.
Yeah,
and they just run through that. So I'm pretty sure there's like some songs from there on there. But we would also, whenever me and my family would jam out, because my brother is a musician, he plays guitar, and we'd just sing together. And you know, my mom would join in, and my sister would join in. And we'd sing, "Thank You for Letting Me Be in Myself."
Oh yeah.
And it was you know, I don't know if that's on that album, but
yeah, that is on that album. It's killer, and so is "If You Want Me to Stay," which is an amazing song. It's a song with no chorus. There's no chorus at all. It's just like 6 verses, but it's a groove. It's one of those things. It really, and it was a #1 song. It's one of those songs, and there's been a handful of those #1 songs with no choruses. There's a handful. "Stairway to Heaven." No chorus in that either. It's just like 20 verses. And the best guitar solo that ever was recorded. Man, Jimmy Page nailed that solo. But you know, I love, nowadays, I mean, I listen to a lot of blues. I love, my all-time favorite blues guitar players are, well, what I've been listening to pretty much daily lately is Freddie King. Okay. And, he's been, I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all those cats, all Clapton, they all like say he's the greatest or whatever, and I'd have to agree with him. He's a fantastic musician. What I like about Freddie is his vocal. I'm really a vocal guy. I love shredding. I can shred it up on the guitar all day long. That's awesome. I love that. It's a fun thing to do. But I'm really moved by artists that have great vocal. Mm-hmm. And Freddie King's vocals are just off the charts. You know, and that's why I like Ray Charles and Prince.
Yeah,
you know, guys like that, because they just their voices are so good, you know. Mm-hmm. Killer tone, lots of soul, and they just pull you in. They make you feel good. Yeah. Make you want to sing. Whenever I hear those guys, I just want to like grab my guitar and start singing.
Yeah.
And that's the best feeling in the world right there, you know. So,
well, really inspirational. But
cool.
All right, well, Leroy, man, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been a really meaty some good meat in this conversation. I'm glad that we were able to hit up not just music licensing, but we talked a lot about direct-to-fan marketing tactics there. Because like you, it's not just that I believe in it, but I just see it working.
Yeah,
because I set out to find, like with this show, to find those artists that were doing things that were bringing them the success that they wanted in any way, shape, or form. It could be they sell more albums for their album release, or they get more fans to come to the show, or they sell more merch, or they just feel more confident. It could be any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And what I've been finding is cohesive between all these artists, including you, is that you got that open mind. You're willing to, stay up to date with what's happening now on how to get your music out there. How to have that hustle, how to, and you're not like afraid to make money. You're not afraid to sell your music. I think that a lot of artists it's kind of like putting the brakes on your car while you're hitting the gas pedal. You're making music, but you're putting the brakes on because you're adverse to getting it out there, to marketing and selling it. It's a vicious cycle, but that's why I bring people like you on, so you can slap some sense into everybody else.
Yeah, man. Hey, it's like you can be all whatever you want to call it, and not sell out all you want. Meanwhile, I'll be selling out the venue down at the corner bar. So
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My party's going to be a lot better, man. Trust me.
We'll have a lot. We'll have a lot more fun. But it's like, I think I can't remember who told me this, but they said if you want to be a musician, you can do that. You just go play music. But if you want to have a music career, then you have to start paying attention to the other parts of your music career. But
because somebody else is, and they're going to take that space.
Yeah.
So you might as well go get in there and get as much real estate as you can, or somebody else will.
Yeah.
It's you got to hustle, and you got to keep it constantly going, man. But yeah, I had a great time chatting with you, and if you ever want to do it again, we can maybe get into a lot more of the direct-to-fan marketing concepts and some of the internet concepts. I'm sure that we could really get deep into some of this stuff. And
absolutely.
I think some of your listeners would really benefit from that. And I know this was the first time we've done it, so we're kind of just talking, telling stories and stuff like that. But we could be on this thing for hours.
Yeah, I know. So we'll break it up here because we're busting in an hour and 5 minutes here.
Oh,
you're almost about to beat the interview with that I had with my old guitar instructor, which is a badass interview. But that one was like an hour and 10 minutes. So Leroy, thanks again, man. We're definitely going to hit you up for a follow up in the future. And
anytime.
Until then, man, take it easy.
Cool, buddy. Talk to you later.
And that wraps up this week's episode of Seeds of Music. On the show, we had today Leroy Miller sharing his vast wealth of knowledge on how he makes his living with music licensing, along with a lot of other tips for making your way in this new music industry. So really loved having him on the show. Make sure to check out the links I posted below. Follow through, give your support, and grab some of his music and check it out. Because this guy is definitely a badass guitarist. I've watched some of the videos and definitely can smoke me on guitar, no doubt about it. So next, sign up for the email newsletter if you haven't. This is how you'll get updates on new interviews, vlog episodes, and articles, plus special newsletter content to help you build a bigger fan base and sell more music online. And also, subscribe to our podcast, leave a rating and review. You know that this is what you got to do if you want to really support the show. Just subscribe to the podcast at iTunes, leave a rating and review. To do that, you just have to search Seeds of Music, Rise Above the Noise. And if you like this interview, make sure to like and share it with everyone you know on Facebook and Twitter. And lastly, comment on the video. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on these interviews, what you'd like to hear covered in another interview, or maybe you know someone who you think would be a great fit for the show, or perhaps that person is you. I have an open door email policy. Just email me at kyle.seedsofmusic@gmail.com. The most it takes me 2 days to get back to you, but rest assured I will get back to you for sure. And remember, we are the future of music.